Welcome to the Wellness Collective. I'm standing in for Dean Bernard Richardson, who is with the School of Social Work faculty this afternoon because of the loss of our distinguished faculty member, Dr. Ruby Gordine. Our prayers are with all of those who are touched by this loss. Today, we welcome our featured guest expert, Gretchen Rohr. She's a Dharma educator and transformative justice practitioner. As a former magistrate judge and decades-long civil rights legislator and disability justice advocate, Ms. Rohr left the bench in 2016 to help build alternative justice programs after discovering she was powerless to keep her own loved ones from cycling through the country's debilitating criminal industrial complex. Ms. Rohr's spiritual activism is heavily influenced by growing up in her father's church and through her mentorship by former Black Panthers who shared mindfulness practices developed behind bars. With deep gratitude, Gretchen continues to integrate those lessons alongside her studies in the Theravada Buddhist lineage and generative somatics transformative leadership training. She teaches with the Insight Meditation Community of Washington and serves on the board of the Zepp Wellness Center, a nonprofit led by Black queer sex workers that offers free mental health care, embodied practices, and income support for QTBIPOC survivors of sexual violence. Currently, Ms. Rohr works at Open Society Policy Center, Open Society Foundations, managing U.S. grant making on radical healing, community accountability, and violence interventions. Join me in welcoming Ms. Gretchen Rohr to our Wellness Collective.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ms. Rodwell. And I definitely want to extend my thanks to Dean Richardson, to the entire team of the Wellness Collective for including me in this series. I've heard from just some colleagues that I adore of what community you've been cultivating here, and really excited to be invited. Happy Lunar New Year. And congratulations to all of you who are starting a new semester at Howard, and all of you who are starting anew with this year. For some of us, it doesn't always feel very new, especially given a lot of what we carried in the past year. And so when I was invited to think through what I would like to share, and it was towards the end of the year where I was feeling quite a bit of loss that many of us have felt during this period of the pandemic, a loss of family members, my aunt, my godfather, my beloved Maltese support animal, and the loss of a lot of ideas as to what we can expect as we move forward, and what I am able to produce. Quite a bit has changed for me, and I expect for you, because as we know, that change is, as Octavia Butler notes, change is God. Change, it is everything we do touch will change us, and as we continue to move into that. So loss in and of itself doesn't feel good. The pain and the difficulties that we've all been holding, we've all been carrying, those of you who are working in campaigns, activism on a social level, but also just in the most intimate levels. What we have been struggling with in these years of the pandemic and many of the years in the tensions even beforehand, can often feel like there's just a sense of loss and a sense of being stuck. One of the great losses that we have experienced quite recently is the loss of Thich Nhat Hanh. He introduced me to the practice of Buddhism, even though my training has primarily been in the Theravada tradition. He's what brought me to Buddhism, has brought so many others. And I remember fondly going to, in 2011, and taking steps to the Blue Cliff Monastery up in New York. And this was a time when I was on the bench. I was a judge. And I was really seeing, quite honestly, the worst of people. I was seeing the space where people enter and occupy at the worst times of their lives. And quite honestly, they were communicating in ways that was in their worst. And I was just blown away being in this space where people really operate in ways which is the best of them. They bring the best of them. And even from the simplicity of the joy that was in the space of focus, I was really angry at that time and frustrated that all the work and the efforts that I had put into the system of justice, people weren't getting better. It wasn't seeming to work. And I was frozen in my own narrow perception of that. And Thich Nhat Hanh, I raised that and thank you. And that when I was there at Blue Cliff, and you can see that there's a crack in this, I grabbed one of the calligraphies that is so beautifully reminds us of our attachment to perceptions. At that time, I needed this message, which was, are you sure? I was really attached to believing that I was right about the path in which I was going to pursue justice and how it needed to be done. And the question was, are you sure? Are you sure about that? And I had a very narrow understanding of that teaching. It is one that has haunted me for quite some time, but has fed and helped evolve my practice of what is often called in Buddhist practice as the 5 remembrances. We remember that everything is, we will lose everything. We will lose our health. We'll lose our lives. Ultimately, we will lose everyone that we love and all that is dear to us. And I realized what I held so dearly were my own ideas. I love my ideas. I don't know if you all do, but my attachment to them was what really required some investigation. And an investigation in a way that is freeing and joyful. But that is where they sing a lot at Blue Cliff Monastery and in all the other spaces that have been generated by those who support this practice. And it really is our fear, which I really noticed it was my fear, which made it very easy for me to do nothing if there's not a clear indication that something's going to work out as I hope or expect it. So I was using the, are you sure? As a, well, I'm not, so I better do nothing. Are you sure? I'm not sure it'll work out. Maybe I shouldn't take that risk. Are you sure? And it was a form of second guessing myself. And that is not at all the teaching that was offered at the time, but that is how I was holding it. As noted by Ms. Rodwell, I'm really proud to join with other philanthropic and frontline activists who integrate healing and transformative justice approaches across the globe. Past 5 years, I've really been lucky to, witnessed the demand for government accountability, I switched to working with a foundation and not working within the criminal legal system because I realized I was not sure that that was the only way to find justice. I was not sure. And actually, I was sure. I am sure that justice lives and breathes outside of the criminal legal system. I am sure that there are ways we can do better. I am sure, I felt it in my body. I am sure that there are ways I can make justice live and breathe in my day to day, despite believing in and loving the work and the structural work that has to be done. There must be a form and a frame to continue my movement forward, even when I feel stuck, when I feel that I have lost even faith in myself, my own perceptions, a faith in the supports that inevitably will always be changing. It's a part of our lives. And so I have taken a lot of joy and seeing how the partners that I work with across the country are stepping into new creative ways of finding safety, creating justice, creating a way in which our bodies reflect back to us. There is more, and listening in. Examples can go from a high level of government accountability, as I motoed like with in Atlanta. Some of our partners, Women on the Rise, has a campaign where they're repurposing the Atlanta jail, the detention center, 450,000 square feet into a center for equity and wellness. And other groups like Vision Change Win and Bold and Highlander Center are bringing the transformative justice movement into formation by teaching safety, security practices, and other forms of being and moving together, which have been passed down to us from our movement elders all the way back through the end of time, back into ancestry and generations of work, but very much centered in the work of those who supported me, who were organizing in the 60s. I believe in a future where everyone has resources and self-determination to heal and transform the immediate and even localized and interpersonal and generational trauma in the ways that we choose at a pace we choose, and using methods that are rooted in our cultural and ancestral traditions. This is a belief that's been instilled by me, by other philanthropic and frontline activists, particularly those in the healing justice movement. I'm going to include and send a lot of links to the folks that I follow, I support, I try to resource, and I most definitely study. I know so many of you do as well. None of these ideas are new to me, are new to any of us, but finding what really opens up for you as a way to embody transformation, not just at this high systems level, but then what are we doing in our own day-to-day practices that allow us to notice there is freedom in creating anew. I had a conversation with Erica Woodland, who's with Queer and Trans Therapists of Color Network back in 2022 when this pandemic began. And in the pain of the early days, he said, healing is perceived as a privilege. And when the necessity is in our face, people may be open to it in a new way. I had no idea how well he predicted the space that so many others like me have shifted. There is no longer a question about the necessity of healing. There is the question, am I sure that this is the path that feels right? Am I sure that I am not attaching to perceptions and beliefs that are limiting me going forward. And to be able to make that movement, we can't push ourselves into the next stage. Reflection, the pause. This is called the Wellness Collective. Our wellness does live and breathe through our opportunity to pause and reflect. It is one of the first stages of accountability, as Mia Mingus teaches so many of us as well. The time for reflection. We have to offer that to ourselves individually as we offer it to our friends, our partners, our family members, our teachers, our institutions. And actually, it gets a little complicated as to how much time we allow. There is definitely a sense of urgency with institutions, but we need to create institutional pauses. We need to create and include within our structure of designing strategy and a work forward in solidarity with others, this time to pause. It really is a time to mourn. Adrienne Maree Brown has a new book out, Grievers. If any of you haven't caught it yet, I highly recommend it, in addition to many of the other pieces that she's produced in nonfiction. And it advances forward these questions of the role of grief in our lives. Malkia Siraj also has really introduced into the transformative justice movement the question of how can we open our arms to what the future is if we aren't opening our hands to the grief of what we have to let go of. So what is it that I've noticed it's important to let go of? And I'm happy, and I encourage you all to maybe include in the chat what you've had to let go of, or what losses you're carrying and need to mourn and need to grieve. Because with that grief also comes joy. But with that grief also comes a telling, a truth telling. We have the responsibility to face that. I had the wonderful privilege of being invited to Minneapolis, back to Minneapolis, which is a home for me. My family does reside there. As I was with many other partners invited by Black Vision Collective and their partners, 70 different organizations and businesses that were working to help the city of Minneapolis imagine a future of safety where we can feel more sure as to it being built for our own security, for our liberation. What I noticed in knocking on those doors was how much of the conversations reflected back to me the fears that I myself hold, whether on that topic of how we create community safety that is effective and supports everyone's safety, down to just, do I believe my elected officials? They say they'll do that, but will they? People I really noticed door to door were experiencing a sense of grief, a sense of loss in faith. Folks have played cops and robbers from early days on. We have an opportunity to really question, really, is that the best model? Are you sure? What is demonstrating that? The young people who rose up in Minneapolis developed years and years of organizing and narrative development and small, intimate conversations, educating themselves and each other on what was not working. They tried so much. And they had gone through the work of mourning. As I stepped towards the George Floyd Memorial area, watched the stewards who've been keeping that sacred space alive all this time since his murder, and walked just a few blocks to the cemetery that reflects and has the tombstones of so many others who are taken down in early stages in their life, early spaces in their life by police violence, by state violence. Are we sure this is working? Are we sure this feels right? Are we sure this is the best way to secure ourselves? How does it feel in my body? These aren't questions about right or wrong. It's not to encourage someone to admit wrong. It's to invite us into a space of creating a future where there can be more. But to do that we need to have this space of mourning, of grief, and of the letting go. And so that is why I do see loss as the opening that allows for us to walk and move forward. Grief and mourning is the opening that allows us to recognize, wow, that was a really good idea. That extra new way in which I wanted to make some adjustments or amendments with monitoring or advocacy or reforms. And then realizing, am I sure that's the best that can be done? And I'm sure that is effective. And am I sure that is meeting the need? And time after time in these conversations I was having in Minneapolis, my sister beside me, walking the streets, people were very sure it was not working. 44% of the people voted for a belief and a faith in a future where things could work more effectively for their own safety. But the fear of not knowing what that looks like has held so many of us in stuckness. I use that as an example, not as to pressure point what you all are believing or your positions of campaigns taken by my fellow colleagues and so many that I owe my political education to in the transformative justice movement. I use it as an example to remind us that this work, this individual work, the stuff that we're doing right now, seated, this 30-minute conversation, it's not just about us. The life of interdependence means that our own fears, our own stuckness, my frigidity is impacting everyone. It creates a community culture. And my ability to open to the grieving in the morning and recognizing, yeah, that was actually a really good idea and it didn't work. For many, our current process of policing may have been a really good idea. Prisons, created as an idea to replace enslavement, may have been a good idea. Is it working? Are we sure? This somatic opening, the organizers in Minneapolis and spaces all around the globe are encouraging us to open ourselves up to something new, to create something new. And whether you have the energy to jump into that, take the energy instead to dive into yourself. Find what you need. Where's the grieving that is necessary for you to reflect on, especially if it's grief of people we've lost in our lives in the last few years who we had very complicated relationships with. The grief of losing an abuser. The grief of letting go of an idea that just didn't pan out. We need to do that work. And there are plenty of people who can support you in that. Coach is so much more experienced than I am. I can provide those supports in the tie links to many of those, and also welcome engagement with those who are interested in the groups and the reading circles that are developing here locally and around the country and around the globe. This is a global conversation. But for those in DC, it's linked to individual living as well as to global activism. Ruthie Wilson Gilmore has always stated that abolition is a form of presence. We must focus on what we can create. There is there's just so much optimism about it, but it's not naive, fantastical optimism. In fact, no. The optimism and the naive, fantastical, magical thinking is believing that by sticking with what we are doing, by staying in this frigid state, by holding an attachment to misperceptions, we'll free ourselves. Freedom is not in that practice, is not in that frigid state. It is in the state of constantly and responsibly asking ourselves, are you sure? I have one practice, if we have a little bit of time, that I can walk you all through as to how to bring this all into your own daily practice. Some of it is when we get in the space of fight, flight, or freeze. My system just kind of shuts down. And so some of the somatic practices or vagus nerve practices can really help shift and give you a space to breathe and notice how something may feel in your body. So one adjustment that I've made that I've learned from some folks is if you focus in forward, your eyes forward in a prayer position, and then open it up. And if your arms are not able to spread, you could also do this with sticks, anything that can be in the periphery of your view. And I'll shift here. If you move your arms out just to the periphery of your view, so you can see them on either edge if you move your eyes, but keep your nose forward. And then starting on your left side, keep your eye to your left side as you slowly move. I'm going to do this quickly because we have very few minutes left, but as you slowly move in about a 30-second stint to the left, and then move your right hand back, but keep your left eye to your left side without moving your nose. And then move your left hand with your eye following it to the right. And notice how that feels, and breathe in. And then remain on the right side as you move your left hand back to the other periphery. Your gaze remains on the right. And then finally, your gaze returns to the center as your hands return to the center. You may close your eyes and breathe and just take in how your body may feel. I'm sorry that's just so rushed through. There are plenty of different hacks and changes to it, and I'm happy to share more with the folks who administer this wellness collective. Thank you so much for your time with me and for your listening. I look forward to your next convenings. I'm going to turn it back over to Ms. Rodwell.
Thank you so much, Ms. Rohr. That was really amazing. I just want to remind everyone that exercise at the end, you can always watch it again. This will be housed on our YouTube channel. So even though we moved through it quickly, you can access that. But Ms. Rohr, this was a fantastic time, and we look forward to inviting you back again. Thank you again so much from the entire community. Blessings all.